My Mother, The Person and the Patient is an original podcast written and hosted by me, Fatuma Kuso. This podcast is about my mother, Timira Abdisamed, Ayaya we call her. That's the Somali word for grandmother. And her great-grandkids call her Ayaya too, and that's their way of saying great-grandmother. As if the diagnosis were a signal to the disease to go ahead and ravage my mother's mind, we noticed a dramatic change only a few weeks after we left the neurologist's office, March of 2011. It might have been late April or early May when my mother stopped sleeping. And I mean, she would not sleep for the entire night. So if we went to bed, maybe 9, 10, or 11 at night, she would wake up a couple hours later. And she would go to every bedroom, waking the kids up. Get up. Aren't you going to school? You're going to be late for school. You need to be moving. Let's go. And then she'll go to my bedroom and she'll say, get up. You're going to be late for work. Let's get moving. And then once she woke everybody up, she'll come to the kitchen and start breakfast. Cooking this, cooking that, pulling this out, pulling this out. 3 o'clock, everybody is awake. We're all upset. We're all exhausted every day for months. I came to work, caught between awake and asleep, and I was exhausted all the time. And after a while, I had to come up with a solution to deal with this. So I decided I need to baby-proof the house. So I got these cup-like things. They're white. I'm going to include a picture of it on my website so you could see it. So I put those cups on the doorknob. So in order for a doorknob to be opened, you need to put your thumb and middle finger and squeeze the knob thing and turn the cup thing and turn the knob. So I put that on every bedroom door except my mother's bedroom door and the bathroom. So she could come in and out of her own bedroom and she can use the bathroom, but she won't be able to come into our bedrooms. That kind of like deterred her for a night or two when she didn't really know what's going on. Why can't she open these doors? And she tried. I could hear her walking back up and down, back and forth, up and down, trying to open this door, going down the stairs, trying to open the kids' bedroom doors. And after a while, she would get tired and go back to bed. And after that, she took into pounding the doors because she realized we are still in those rooms, pounding and saying, calling my name, calling one of the kids' name. We stayed in the room and she couldn't come in, but we were awake all at the same time. So like in Alzheimer's fashion, I'm always playing catch up. I have a problem and then I have to search a solution to that. And the solution was I went to her doctor and I said, this is what's going on. I am struggling. I can't sleep. I can't rest. And she is not resting. Perhaps she's taking a nap during the day when we're not at home, but nobody in the house is sleeping. And he said, okay, I am going to give you a medication that will have her sleep at night. And I said, okay, that's great. So he gave me this prescription. I'm not going to share the name of the prescription here because I don't really want to do that. The doctor told me when you start giving it to her, it might take her 48 hours, 72 hours. People are different for her to get used to it. He gave me the doses. Everything was great. First 2 nights, it didn't help. Third night, it helped because she stayed down until maybe 5 or so. But by the time she was taking that medication for 10 days, it shut my mother off. Like that's the only way I could describe the side effect that medication had on her. It shut her off. That my mother's personality totally changed. And at the time, she was very verbal and very social and would talk to you about her life, her raising her children, growing up, all that. So she was really a very good storyteller and she would socialize with you. So all that was gone. She would sit there and literally she became part of the furniture, a piece of the sofa and the couch and the chair and the TV. She was just like them, sit there and stare through you. When I when I come back from work, she would always talk to me, tell me what happened during the day. All that was gone. And I'm thinking, what is happening here? So I had to make the decision to say, do I want to have her? Because I felt like I was losing her sooner than I needed to, right? Because the doctor told me, her neurologist, told me that your mother is going to stop talking. Your mother is going to lose her language, is going to lose her ability to tell stories, to talk to you. She won't even be able to call out to you, wouldn't know if she's hurting or not. All of that would be gone as the time progresses, he said, depending how long your mother lives. So I have that in the back of my mind. So now I'm thinking I'm pushing her further along this path of Alzheimer's. So what I did was I went to the doctor and I said, I need to get her off this medication because it's not working. It's causing more problems than it does. The doctor said, you want her to sleep, and she's sleeping. And I said, but she's sleeping 24 hours. Even when she's awake, she's not awake. I don't want her to sleep 24 hours. I want her to sleep at night. So he gave me a way to take her off the medication because these medications are strong. So we had to use a withdrawal method where we say, okay, give her, have 3/4 of the pill, half of the pill, quarters, things like that. So gradually take care of. So I took her off. It took her another 2 weeks to become into herself and start moving about. So then what I did was in my kitchen, I have a wall separating my kitchen and my living room. I had it at the time. I got rid of it now. So I have a wall separating my kitchen and my living room. And there is a walkway, entryway, or whatever you want to call it. And it's about 36 inches. So I decided that I was going to put a door there. So I put a door there and I put that cup thing on that door too. So my mother cannot go downstairs. So her and I are upstairs. Our bedrooms are there. So I thought she cannot go downstairs for 2 reasons. When she's half asleep, I was afraid of her falling off the stairs, number one. Number two, then she won't be able to wake up everybody in the house. At least some of us can get rest. So that's what I did. And then her and I are here, and we have the kitchen, the bathroom, and then we have our bedrooms up here. So her and I stayed there, and I decided that for a week or two, I would just tough it out while she knocks the door. And I timed it in a time where the schools were closed and we were in a summer break, and I could take a nap during the day. And that's how I dealt with that one hurdle. But with this disease, the hurdles keep coming, right? And I am realizing as time goes on that I cannot prepare. Not only can I not prepare for losing my mother one piece at a time, that I realize I cannot prepare for the symptoms that disease was bringing and what was my strategy. So I was always reacting instead of being proactive, because there was no way, even now, 11 years later, there is no way for me even now to know what's coming tomorrow when we wake up. As I put her to bed as I put her to bed tonight, I have no idea what I'm going to face tomorrow or next Monday, a week from there. Sometimes nothing changes, and sometimes everything changes. So I live by the acceptance that I cannot couldn't prepare the loss I faced, and cannot prepare for the challenges this disease continues to throw at me, to throw my way. The challenges this disease throws my way every time. I cannot prepare. So I live by the idea that take one day at a time. Okay. I remember one time when two of my children were fighting. They're close in age, 18 months apart. He's breathing in my air. He took my pencil. He did this and that. And it was close to when I became a single parent, and I'm kind of like really at a difficult stage, and I'm really upset and I'm crying. My mother must have been visiting my sister or something, so I called her, and then I said, she was at the house with me, I can't remember. I told her, I don't know how I'm going to do this for 18 more years, because at the time the youngest was just 2. So I said, how am I going to do 16, 17, 18 years from now of this kind of like challenges? How am I going to raise these kids? And she said to me, if you can get through tonight, everybody gets their homework done, eats their dinner, takes their shower, and gets to bed, you already won the battle. You cannot think 18 years down the road, not even a year down the road, not a month down the road, no day down the road. Just tonight, your goal should be, can I get them to bed tonight without anybody getting hurt? With their shower, meal, homework, in their pajamas, in their bed safely. That's all you can think about. So I always remind myself of her advice when I was raising my children, and try to walk this journey alongside with her one day at a time. And that's what I'm doing. As you listen to my stories of all the obstacles Alzheimer's had thrown in my way, it's easy to feel sorry for me. It's easy to see how this disease that reduced my mother, a shell of her old self, had taken away from me so much, how I'm losing my mother every day over and over again, how each time I walk into the room and I see a confusion on her face and realize she doesn't know who I am, I'm losing her all over again. Each time she tries to tell me something and she has no words, cannot pull the words, and she is giving me a letter here, letter there, that will lead to more confusion. I'm losing her all over again. It's so easy to see my mother as nothing more than the disease that reduced her to a shell of her old self. But I want to show you my mother as the person, my mother as more than the disease that marks her now. I want to tell you the fierce woman that told her stories unapologetically, celebrating the beautiful parts and harsh realities equally. I want to share with you the stories she told us when we were children about her as a girl growing up in a small village. I want to share with you the tales that marked her adulthood, the ones that told her losses, and the ones that shared her ultimate winnings. Following is one of those stories reconstructed from my childhood memory. The truck stopped and a young man lifted the tarp that covered the vehicle. The villagers were in the middle of a sprawling market, teeming with people that seemed to move in circles. Timira inhaled and took in the air unlike anything she'd ever smelled before. The odor, a mixture of urine and weak old milk, left in the heat of the drought, hit her in waves, heavy and powerful. She bolted up, fled down the steps and away from the people descending off the truck. She doubled up and gagged. Her stomach heaved with nothing to birch. Bitter pulp filled her mouth and added to the nausea. Her mother ran to her and held her head between her hands. "Where are we?" Timira asked, through the haze of her nausea-induced tears. Her mother didn't answer. Maybe she didn't know either, might have been as lost as Timira was in this place drenched with the smell of horror. Her mother wiped Timira's mouth with the hem of her garbisar. "Come with me, child." She drew her to her feet and Timira let her. "Where are we going?" Timira asked her father. Standing on either side of him were her 2 brothers, clinging to him. The elder, his white hair sitting on his head in wisps, appeared thinner than he had been when they left the village, flinched at Timiro's question. He rocked back and forth and reached for his adult son standing next to him for support. No one offered an answer. Timiro scanned the market before her. Tin sheds lined up in front of a large brick depots. Just before that, small wooden stalls stood with no pattern. Throngs of people selling food, clothing, jewelry, and home goods held their merchandise aloft over their heads. They announced the price, yelling loud, and others even louder. Their shrieks formed a rhythm, enough to drive a sane person mad. Timiro put her hands over her ears. Her mother took her hand and tucked it under her elbow. Timiro, stay with me. Her father lifted her 2-year-old brother off the ground and held him close to his chest. The pouch that held the little money he'd brought safely tucked between him and the baby. He pulled Farah closer to him with his free hand. Why did we even come here? Timiro's question carried the anger she'd felt inside. The elder and the men in the village, her father among them, had labored over this trip for days before they left, going back and forth to decide where and when to go. Dividing the families and deciding groupings took days. The exodus led them in this awful place. The drought was better. Her mother must have not heard her. Did you say something? She asked, her eyes fixed on a woman advancing toward them closer and closer, carrying a pot and a pan in one hand and a cedar basket filled with knives, forks, and spoons in the other. Several other women, their children in tow, followed her. They moved toward the villagers in frenzied steps, their faces exquisitely drawn with pure hostility. They wore the intention to get closer to the villagers, closer than their garments, like predators inching toward their prey, closer to sell them something. They glared at them hard, keeping the villagers within their gaze. Still, they didn't seem to see them, only what money they could get out of them. They swarmed around them, bees coming to sting, to take a bite of the pennies in the villagers' pockets. I have a house for rent, one woman yelled. Her elbows bent, she pushed the others to get to the front of the line. 2 shillings for house for an entire family, she shrieked. Don't listen to her. Another woman wagged a finger in the other woman's direction. I have a lot of houses, enough for all of you. Another woman, pulling a boy not much older than Timiro behind her, pushed the first one to the side and took the center stage. My houses are better. She spoke much louder to make herself heard. Only 1 shilling per family. The elder stood in front of the villagers, and the rest of them, young and old, men and women, pulled behind him quietly, like rainwater moving toward the lower ground. Don't listen to them. A man spoke this time. They can't let a property without their husbands. He didn't seem to need to push his way in, for his words drew the villagers' attention to him. It's a man you need to negotiate. Nonsense. The first woman turned to him with a sneer. A man, you say? She put one hand on her hip and waved the other in his direction. You are a man. Do you have a land? The man was retreating by the time she'd asked that question, walking backward slowly at first, but fast as soon as he was far enough that she couldn't reach him. The woman turned to the villagers with a forced cheeriness. In my land, you could all be together with water close by, like your village, the one you left behind. After an eternity of competing offers, the woman, the one who'd offered many properties to rent, led the villagers out of the market in a quiet procession. They poured into a narrow alley, the woman ahead of them fast, half running, half walking, villagers moving in an exhausted trickle behind her. She'd fly far ahead of them, narrating about the landscape. She'd drift further and further away from them, until the distance made it hard for her to communicate with them, only to return with the same speed. "Can you walk any slower?" she would ask, her tone between a mocking jeer and encouraging jabs. "How long might you be staying with us?" she asked, as if the villagers were her guests and she'd be sad to see them leave. Most villagers come and never leave. Perhaps she couldn't decide which was the better option for her, if they stayed forever or left soon. "They come for the drought and never leave for the rain," she'd said. "Something about this city anchors people in place." She asked and answered her own question, moving while outlining the beauty of the city and complaining how slow the villagers were moving. "Look how the day aged and we're still not there," she'd said. "I really need to get back to my market stall before the night falls." She uttered that flying ahead of them. "I only came because I felt bad for you." She stopped here, perhaps in search of acknowledgement for her effort. "There are vultures in that market, I should know." She stopped here and waited for a protracted minute. "I wanted you to get away from those hungry animals right quick." It was early evenings when the villagers arrived at their new homes. The property they rented comprised of several rooms made of tin sheets. The walls, the roof, and the doors were all made of tin sheets. There were no tinars to bake bread like they had in the village. No village square with fire to gather around at night like they had always done. No water well, cooking sheds, or those homemade wooden beds they used at home. On their way to the city, they'd carried the belief that they were heading for advancement, something better than they had. Now they went backward. The women stared at their husbands, the sacks containing the bread dough they'd mixed day before at home in their hands. "We rented a place with nowhere to bake?" their eyes seemed to ask unanimously. Even though the woman claimed she was giving the villagers a large property, each family had a single room. The sun was well below the horizon, but the rooms were hot, too hot. "This is hotter than yet," Timira's mother remarked to her father. The reality was not lost on anyone. The parents sent their children to sit under the trees scattered in the yard in search of shade. For the rest of the day, the adults spent unpacking and trying to make this desolate place resemble a home. It took a week for the men to build communal tinars for baking and one cooking shed to be shared. "Sharing your kitchen with another woman is like sharing your husband," Timira's mother tried to smile at the end of that statement, but the smile died upon her lips prematurely. "Both make you feel exposed." Her mother must have felt the exposure from the beginning, because she ended up waiting from day one for the tinar to free up. She'd overslept. Timira and her brothers were waiting for breakfast. Her father, with no breakfast left with the men for the market in search of work. Her mother must have felt guilt for not getting up early enough. "Don't leave with nothing in your stomach," she'd said. "It's only one breakfast. I won't die from hunger." Like always, Timira's father softened the ruthless reproach she'd always delivered toward herself. "I have to go to earn a few shillings," Timira's father said, "before we run out of the little money we brought with us." Timira's mother nodded, but that never stopped her from being her own hardest critic. In fact, looking back, his kindness might have added to the severity of the guilt she'd always felt, her stubbornness, her lack of cooking skills. Perhaps if he got mad at her, yelled at her like other men had done with their wives, maybe she would have felt as if she'd paid a price for her negligence, suffered the consequences of her actions. But the way he'd only smiled at her, lifting his hand to his mouth to stifle a laugh, might have made her feel worse. "I would like to know how your father feels about me." That lament came the second morning, as Timira's father prepared to go to the market with an empty stomach again. Despite her best effort to get to the kitchen before other women, she didn't stir until Timira's father woke her up. He was dressed and ready to go by then. The event hadn't seemed to faze Timira's father as he sipped cold dark tea left over from last night, working very hard not to laugh. Only if I could crawl inside that head of his and read his real thoughts about me. You'll hear him laughing at you and calling you silly. Timira's comments seemed to have startled her mother. Maybe she hadn't planned for her to hear. You think so? She asked with so much seriousness, even though Timira was only 12. I know so, Timira said, even though she hadn't understood how heavy her mother's load of guilt and shame was until much later, when it was too late for all of them. My Mother, The Person and the Patient can be found in all your favorite podcast apps. Please subscribe, listen, share, and follow. And join me next week for another episode of my mother's journey as both the person and the patient. Thank you.